Welcome to the Wincinnati podcast. We've got a special guest here today, and no, I'm not talking about myself. We've got Joe Goodberry here, and we are talking Joe Mixon and the offseason plan here on the Wincinnati podcast.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm AC Zim.
We got a special show as always.
The voice of the Bengals. Dan Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season.
I'm still going to give you the same AJ.
I'm going to work as hard as I can to be the best.
Always working ever since I met y'all, boy.
I got to get your top 5 receivers.
Better, man.
Good. Watch out for us.
Welcome, everyone, to the Wincinnati podcast on a special Monday edition. No Ace today, but your old friend Sova back in the seat. Good to be back. You know, limited guest appearance here, just helping out. Zim, as always. Zim, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty daggone good, man. I'm pretty excited. It's so crazy. You have all these interactions on the internet, and it's the craziest thing when you think about it. A lot of people don't think that they'll ever get a chance to talk to those people directly. And I think Twitter Spaces kind of solve some of that stuff. But me and Joe, we kind of communicate all the time on the internet, but it's so good to actually be able to hear people's voice inflections, tone, how do they say it? All these different things. And I think it's such a dope concept to do. And then on top of that, there ain't that many people that are willing to even do that. You know what I mean?
Right,
in this world that we're especially sports Twitter or sports social media, a lot of people do not, they say that they want to talk that sports stuff, but we're about to do this live, so that's very, very important to kind of set the tone.
So let's not wait any longer. Let's bring in our guest, Joe Goodberry. Joe, how are you, man?
What's up, boys? I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on and hosting this. And, I'm excited to talk about some of our major topics and things that we'll probably be talking about for a while here, and for the next few months, probably.
So I know it's probably sounds like a broken record, but in 2023, it was the conversation everyone needed to have in the offseason. Was Joe Mixon's future? Was his value and his contract and his play, did it equal a roster spot? Well, what we saw in 2023 was a contract restructuring in order to keep him at a cap number that was team friendly and kept him on the roster, and he still put together a pretty productive season. Fast forward to the present time, 2024, we are having this exact same conversation once again, only this time there are different implications, and I think we're a little more with the influx of the roster, with players moving. There's a lot of movement on the roster this season. I think the argument is a little more heated, and that's sort of the genesis of why we have this show here tonight. Was a conversation between the two of you guys that took opposing stances, and maybe Zim, you can kind of explain where you were in the original as the argument sort of started.
I feel like we were on the internet like normal, just doing what I do. Normally, I'm used to cooking up ops all day, and here comes Joe out of nowhere. And I don't know what started it, but the conversation about Mixon, which we're going to talk about first, because I feel like that was the first portion of it. The Mixon one, I believe there's so many different layers to it, where you have positional value, you have what you think you would build a roster as, and all these different things like that. I have my own beliefs on the running back position and everything like that. But in the conversation that I had with Joe, I felt as though when he had one tweet in particular where he said you could pull a name out of a hat and get any of those dudes. That was the one that I was like, all right, yeah, we got to talk about this, because I feel like Mixon has so much more value that can't be quantified in a lot of different ways. And then the ones that can, I feel like a lot of people that do not want Mixon or don't value Mixon, they totally overlook him.
Joe, what about you? Where is ground zero for how you stand in all of this?
Yeah, so for the Mixon thing, for me, it's mostly Where do you want this offense to go? What do you want this offense to be? What type of direction? How do you want it to evolve? I think that one of my major things this offseason is I don't want to necessarily just run it back with the same personnel. Even if you could afford to keep Tyler Boyd, I'm not interested, right? Like there's some guys that I would like to upgrade on, and sometimes that is a little scary. Sometimes that's a little risky. Doesn't always work out. We've seen it in the past. Moves don't always play out the way they're projected, on spreadsheets, if you will. But the idea is that you get someone younger, you may get someone cheaper, you may get someone that's a little quicker, a little faster, a little more explosive, or the idea is to get someone who fits this offense and what you want this offense to look like, or what it may need to look like for the Bengals to take the next step. And in my opinion, I think we're looking at a running back that, not even like mentioning Mixon, a guy that I think would fit, or what I'm looking for in that position isn't Mixon. So when I say that, what I'm saying is the Bengals are faced with cover 2 shells pretty consistently. It's very hard for a guy, like even if Mixon was 25-year-old Mixon, it'd be very tough for him to break more than 4.5 yards per carry on his good days, because the 2 high shells, there's always going to be an unblocked safety coming down and wrecking you, even if there's good running at 4 or 5 yards. He's hitting the maximum of what he can get versus on this offense versus defense that the Bengals are typically facing. So for me, what would take this offense to another level? It would be a guy or a committee. That's what I really would like to see them do. But it would be a guy that had the speed, had the explosiveness, was better out of the shotgun, was better in the passing game, could help you block, catch. There are so many other ways they got to get explosives out of not just the running game, but the running back position that would get that safety to come down so we can finally throw over the top to Tee Higgins and Jamar Chase again. Right now, defenses aren't scared of you, right? They're not scared you're going to pop one off for 30, 40 yards on the ground, right? We didn't have a run longer than 18 yards from Mixon until the last game. So it was like, the defense are like, run it. We don't care if you get 4 or 5 yards every carry. And even one of his best games over the last calendar year with the Bills playoff game, right? He got 4.5 yards a carry every single time, and they chewed him up and they ran it down their throats the whole game. But still, they only got 4.5 yards per carry pretty much every single time. It's hard to get defenses to crack when you're not busting off long runs.
The part that gets lost in that, all right, cool. So I think that sets everything up. The other part of the conversation is I've written articles, shout out to Paul Danner, shout out to different people that have highlighted the everything that you could say that would be negative towards Joe Mixon. And the problem that I have is everything that is positive, that most outside opinions, whether it be our ops, whether it be somebody that's just a casual football fan, they're all viewing this like we view every single thing else. I feel like the conversation about Mixon is very different than how we view anything else when we're talking about the game of football. I said this to you, I think, online. Nobody has ever gotten up to a Hall of Fame speech. No one has ever accepted all-pro nod. No one has ever accepted any type of award and then referenced an advanced analytics stat to say that, oh, yeah, my expected yards per carry. Like, can you imagine like Emmitt Smith coming up to the podium and saying my expected yards per carry was higher than such and such, and that's what led me to glory? The part of the NFL that isn't on the spreadsheet, the part that isn't talked about is the battle of attrition in a gladiator sport. The guy named Joe Mixon that we're talking about is the second leading rusher in Bengals history. So we have to start off by saying that. Now, what the next step is, there's going to be a person like yourself that will say, yeah, that was cool, but that's what, that was before. But currently, actively, ever since Joe Mixon has come into the league, his average per carry has always been 4.3, or he's always teetered around that or whatever. And that's the style.
It was a lifetime 4.1.
That's the style of runner he is. Mm-hmm. We're going to get into the explosive runs, which I've compared a lot of the different running backs that I've mentioned, which he's actually had more than them. But the style of runner that he is built on efficiency, it's built on ball security, and it's built on a lot of different things that are not outlined on the different metrics that they're picking. And then when we get durability, and then when we get into all the other things that would go in his favor, everybody just totally disregards them. And until we get into these conversations about the debate about Joe Mixon, which is weird that we're always bringing him up instead of other players on the team, the offensive line is always brought into question. The utilization, the scheme, all these different things are always brought up. But then every time that I come back and I give you a raw number on how we talk about football, like yards, how many receiving yards did you have? How many all-purpose yards did you have? The difference in our philosophies, I feel like, our Joe Mixon is a microcosm of how I view football. It's not about what I think you're projected to do. A lot of people are show me type people. I'm a guy that says, show me that. I don't care about what you think that you can expect to do. Raheem Mostert probably has a higher yards per expected per play. He's not available and he's not as durable as Joe Mixon. So Joe Mixon being a captain on the football team, being a top 10 player on the football team after coming off a 1,400-yard performance in this 2023 season, it just looks crazy to me that you're like, yeah, let's remove this guy after he took a pay cut. And now he's performed and hit on numerous metrics that I'm outlining.
Right. So you're valuing the durability, the leadership, locker room, the not fumbling, right? Hit ball security at elite rate. I posted the stats the other day, right? Going back to the year 2000, anyone with over 1,600 career touches, he's 6 fumbles in his career. I mean, that's elite status. That's the best. But when I look at it,
only 3 lost though.
I mean, fumbles are fumbles. You can't predict who's going to recover them, right? If you put the ball on the ground, that could bounce any direction. So I think it's best to, you're right, but I think it's best to just count overall fumbles because you're giving it up to a chance there. But still, it's great. So that's not even, we shouldn't even debate that. But what I want to say is, if they cut him before his roster bonus of $3,028 is due, they will save $6.1 million against cap. Now, you're going to say they don't really need much cap space, and I would agree. They don't. But are you getting correct value for players? I think one of the issues I have is when I looked at last year's roster and looked back at 2023, I said, man, you know what? They didn't get good value for a lot of players on this roster. They didn't get good value for Tyler Boyd. They didn't get good value for Jonah Williams. They didn't get good value for Alex Kappa. I thought he was up and down, right? So if you're going to give him a guy $10 million, is that what you want? Or is that replacement level guard play? Was right tackle replacement level tackle play? And they paid him $13.6 million, right? Sam Hubbard, did they get the value, full value for Sam Hubbard's contract and cap hit? No. Did they get it for BJ Hill? Did they get it for both linebackers they extended? Did they get it for Chidobe Awuzie? Did they get it for Nick Scott? That leads to underachieving as a whole team. So I'm trying to avoid that as much as possible. Now, you would probably say they got the value of the 8.5 cap hit for Joe Mixon having 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns, right? That's fair. Even if you look it up on Over the Cap, the valuation is what? 8.7. So it's right around that range, isn't it? Right. So if you agree on that stuff, and I would agree, his cap hit this year of $8.75 million, it would, for him, in order to be a valuable and get the correct value for this offense and for this team, he would have to replicate that pretty much. 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns, or what? I mean, I think maybe 1,300, maybe 1,250 and 10 touchdowns will be worth it, right? I'm not sure he can get that. And I've got a lot of reasons why, but I'll let you do your part now.
I will say this, just to note that Joe Mixon has only not done 1,300 all-purpose yards, only 2 seasons in his NFL career.
Injuries.
The only time that he didn't do that was his rookie season with Jeremy Hill and Gio Bernard. And the only other time was when we tanked for Burrow and they shelved him at the end and he played 6 games. In the meantime, in that time frame, since 2017, Joe Mixon is 4th amongst all rushers that came into the National Football League. Now, a lot of people are looking at that as a downside, like that was before and he's older or something like that. He's still only 27, going on 28, which is maybe that's a little older for a running back, or you might presume that might be a little bit older. But most of the guys that people are like naming, to me, they're older or they're a little bit younger and they haven't accomplished anything. The 6.1 or the 6.2 cap space that you're talking about, cool. Let's go get the 6.2. Who are you replacing it with? And that's the big question for me, is if you're going to go get younger, faster, explosives, which you had the chance to do last year with Chase Brown. You did that. You got one of the most skillful, fast, dynamic, big burst running backs, and he averaged the same
I'm excited
yards
for him, aren't you?
I am. He averaged the same yards per carry as Joe Mixon. So you're telling me that the guy that's supposed to be way more explosive, way more faster, way more younger, got hurt. And he also averaged the same exact average as Joe Mixon. Why would I take Joe Mixon off the team if this has been a known constant and a known consistent force that has consistently given me 1,300 yards all purpose outside of the 2 years that I just outlined?
All right. So first I'll start with Chase Brown real quick and talk about explosive plays. Any offense that has an explosive play in their drive is 4 times more likely to score on that drive than without. So just the chance he may lose 5 and then get 15 on the next run. And yeah, that's an average of 10, right? But that 15 now gives them a 4 times more likely chance to score just because now it's putting them in Evan McPherson range off one run. So, the explosives are that's the name of the game today. And even when you go back to the 2021 offense, Bengals offense was super explosive, right? Going downfield, dunking on people downfield. And that's why that offense was so good, because they weren't efficient. Like we're talking efficiency, what would be a yard per carry type thing. They weren't that in 2021. They got to the Super Bowl off explosive plays. The impact is huge. And then the next thing. So yeah, he's 28 this season and he's coming off a 1,400-yard, 12 touchdown season. The predicted drop-off may feel extreme. I looked at a data study today. The age 27 years, the last peak year for running backs. Age 28 marks usually their first step in declining, and 29 is usually a steady, steep drop-off. And then from there, it's off the cliff. If we use some Bengals, for example, the age 28 year for Corey Dillon, 1,600 yards for the Bengals. The next year, 600, and he was gone. We never saw him again. The age 28 year for Rudy Johnson, 1,400 yards, 12 touchdowns. The next year, 600 yards. We never saw him again. So that last season, I don't think they want to make that mistake again, is what I'm saying. The next season, you want to waste that money, that's at 600 yards. And like you said, you're excited for Chase Brown. And I thought the offense looked better when Chase Brown and Mixon were together, right? When they had that dynamic and you could give it to both of them, Mixon was pounding them up, softening them up, Chase Brown, bang. Now chase this dude who's running 22 miles per hour, right? That's what I want to see. I want to see more of a 1-2 punch. And ideally, you say, who would you replace him with? Ideally, it'd be a guy you draft in probably the 3rd round. I do like the 2nd, 3rd, maybe even 4th round running backs in this class. Just started watching them, so I don't want to get too specific in it. All of it is hypothetical. But if you could get a 3rd round guy at running back and you could get Chase Brown, and then you're saying now, well, I'd like to keep Mixon because he's a known commodity. I don't know how many touches we're talking about for Joe Mixon at that point. I mean, even if he's the lead runner, if we want to double Chase Brown's touches because he's healthy all year and get him to 120 touches, would you say that's fair, Zim?
Yeah, for sure.
Right, 120. I'm not saying he's taking a lead role. I'm not saying he's RB1 there.
Right.
You say you spend a 3rd round pick and you're able to get Benson or Braylon Allen or whoever you like and for running back. I like
Braylon Allen.
Yeah, I'd like to give him 100 touches then as a rookie, right? That's only 7 touches per game. I mean, I think that's fair. The Bengals had 390 touches at running back last year. And if we're saying right off the rip, we're almost nearing 250 touches just off those two, do we only have 140 to 150 touches left for Joe Mixon at 4.7 yards per touch, what he had last year? Guess what that leads him in his age 28 season total? It leaves him with 700 yards, just like Corey Dillon had in his last year, just like Rudy Johnson had in his last year when they had running backs to replace them too. It was Rudy replacing Corey, and when it was Rudy, they thought they had Chris Berry, but it didn't work out that way.
I think those are all projections in my mind that do work out because so if you guys are following this and there's different backstories on what I believe the team should look like. I want to build something that's very close because I know there's somebody probably like, well, he's just a Mixon homer. I can't stand these Mixon homers. Like, he's such a homer. Like, no, I'm trying to build a system where the Bengals are currently in a Super Bowl winning formula or in the window, right? And in that window is much like when Joe Mixon got there. If you're an older fan of the Bengals, just like James Brooks, they kept on drafting 2nd round running backs. He just kept on beating them out. Until I get and think about like Tee Higgins, who we're going to talk about in a second. Until AJ Green was on the roster, Tee Higgins came there and he ultimately beat them out by week 4, right? In there, you don't, in hindsight, then come back and be like, man, you know what we need to get? We need to go get back that AJ Green money because we kind of overpaid him that year. No, it's a natural transition that you get off of it. But until I get there in the Super Bowl window, I'm not taking away my best players. And if I do take away my best players, I better have a good plan to say these are the guys that are better than. There were guys that were brought up in the conversation on Twitter or whatever, or wherever. Yeah, whenever I hear this, one of the guys that I thought, like, because before you go into a draft, I do want to draft another running back. So let's state that. Everybody understands that we already have Chase Brown, Joe Mixon, and I'm adding another running back. So now you have a running back by committee. And if that guy, say Mixon gets nicked up, say that guy comes in, he starts bursting out big runs, it's a natural transition. But until you get to that point, I'm not in the business of cutting away our best players, because then I'm in a Super Bowl window. Now I don't want a discrepancy at running back. And that's my train of thought. Mixon is very
similar. Well, that's very similar to when they drafted Mixon. They had Gio and Jeremy Hill, and that transition.
Exactly. And the number of the 8.5 cap hit, me and Joe, I do agree. I do feel like the cap hit is too high for me, right? But the APY and what Joe Mixon is currently about to make at 5.75 is not that high to me. It's based off of what he's just accomplished and what I'm projecting him to accomplish. If I didn't get him, right, and say I get that 6.1 savings, there are guys like Zach Moss, right? That's a guy that has more yards per EPA estimated, whatever the mumbo jumbo, whatever the crap, right? There's guys like that are going to be all over the place. Zach Moss has far less carries with the same amount of fumbles. Zach Moss has never had a season like Joe Mixon has ever had. And you still would have to pay this guy in between $3 and $5 million. If you can get a $3 million deal off, that would be insane to me. But I'm going to be generous. Let's say 3 to 5. The cap savings that everybody's talking about the Bengals are going to go and get, keep in mind, they have to go and pay Joe Mixon $2.75 just for releasing him. So then they take the $2.75 and couple that with the new $4 million guy, because you can't leave a gaping hole on a roster that already has holes. So now we're moving into a draft, and you might say, yeah, I got the cap savings, but Mike Brown is saying I'm paying the same exact money, and I'm adding a brand new variance and an unknown entity into a room that has never had the workload of Joe Mixon. It has never had the receiving merit that Joe Mixon has ever accomplished, and that will be. And I'm being fair by offering the best free agent running back that fits in the mold that you're saying, because it's a very unique mold. It's Devin Singletary, it's Gus Edwards, it's AJ Dillon, it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire, bottom feeding running backs of the National Football League that you're saying are on the same level as Mixon, but they're not. They've never done anything that Mixon has done, and they've never been available as much as Mixon has. In Zach Moss's career, I had this pulled up. It just popped off the screen. Why is this going away? In Zach Moss's career, he's never had a workload like Joe Mixon.
I don't want to give them a workload like Joe Mixon, though, to be honest with you.
But this is what you're paying for. He had 183 carries last season, and he only played 14 games. Yes, his yards per carry was higher at 4.3. He only got 5 touchdowns. His targets in the receiving game, he had 37. His PFF receiving grade is one of the lowest in football, and he only had 27 receptions on 37 targets and only 190 yards. Joe Mixon does that in a matter of 2-3 weeks in the National Football League. So not only are you having to replace the rushing efforts of Joe Mixon, you also have to find a receiving threat in all in one, and you're doing that with less money, and you're taking Joe Mixon off just to gain what, $1 million in cap savings, $2 million in cap savings.
So, and as a net, yeah, if you go for $4 million in Zach Moss, but I also think you can sit there and wait. And I think when you look at last year's free agency, we got to week 3, and I was like, man, Devin Singletary is way better than what he's sitting here at. You and I mentioned Singletary on the spot because I'm like, if he's getting $3 million, what do we talk? I think this dude can be a 900-yard rusher with 300 receiving yards. Like, I watching him at Buffalo, I'm like, he can play, he can pass protect, he can make guys miss. He's not fast, right? He's a 4.6 guy, but when you can make guys miss and get to that edge and cause chaos and break off longer runs because of it, it helps your team, and you don't have to worry about what situation you have them on the field. My point there is, though, it's hard to project what these guys are going to get. You see all the running backs that aren't getting tagged this year. I wouldn't be surprised if all of them got way less than we were expecting. I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting there, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, $1.5 million, $2 million, like nothing. I'm talking dirt cheap. Let me find out which guy is still there week 3, week 4 of free agency. It sucks that you got to make this decision on Mixon way before that point even happens. That's the scary part of it, is you got to make that decision before he gets his bonus, because if he gets his bonus, the conversation's done. On March 18th, this conversation is over one way or the other, because they have to decide. If they give him it, you can't cut him afterwards. It just is what it is. You move forward. But that's not going to be, I expect that first week of free agency, they're going to talk to as many running backs, find out what that value is. Are we finding a guy that'll take $3 million? Are we finding a guy that does Zach Moss want $5 million? Well, then we're out. We're not interested, right? Because in my idea, the committee approach at running back with 3 guys that can be interchangeable, with 3 guys that can run out of every style, every offense. You don't have to worry about if it's pass protection. I don't have to worry about if it's a passing play, whatever the case may be. And then you can get explosives with all 3 guys, and the third guy being the drafted guy. We don't know who it's going to be.
Right.
Everyone agrees.
We agree on that part.
Yeah, right. So to me, if I've got 2 guys that I want to give 100 touches to at least, it's hard for me to say Mixon will ever reach that 8.75 value off 120 to 150 touches. And even if it got to 200, and we're talking about 850 yards on the year, total yards. I'm not saying rushing. I'm saying total yards, because that's what he averaged 4.7 per touch last year. That's giving him the benefit of the receiving ability. To me, that's going to create a negative value, and I'm trying to avoid in the window you're in. You want to avoid as many negative values on this roster as possible. And I know there's some that we can't avoid this year. I know there's some that, like, we're going to get to Tee Higgins. I know we can't avoid the Sam Hubbard thing. I don't think anything's going to happen there. We may or may not have anything happen.
That's my candidate.
Right. We've got negative heavyweights on this roster already. I want to try to avoid those as much as possible and find guys that are values. So if that third running back, if I take Mixon from being running back 1 to replacing him, cutting him, and I'm adding a third running back, that's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for A.J. Dillon to be the third. I'm looking for Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be the third guy, right? To be a guy that can mix in there and rotate in there at the cheapest level possible. Who's left? That's where I'm at. Because to me, running backs really don't matter. I feel like I can get 4 out of most guys. 4 is the baseline. 4 yards per carry is the baseline of getting no explosives out of that. Getting, being a solid but not dynamic receiver is the baseline to me. And I feel like Mixon's giving you, while accumulation yards, accumulative production, durability, ball security are great things. I think they're a little overvalued here if we're talking about dollars for traits.
That brings up a good point. Let me just get in here real quick, Zim. That brings up a good point. So you've mentioned explosives. If we look at the way Zach Taylor calls a game and he's looking to pass, the touches and opportunities for carries are limited. Doesn't it feel like there's more value in a guy that can do more with less touches, more of a home run hitter type, than a guy who accumulates and is just your grinded out 4 yards a carry, 4.5 yards a carry? Is this offense better suited for big play opportunity, home run hitting backs?
You want me to take that? Because I do think there's a point there. I think you're making a great point, actually. Because a lot of the rebuttals you get for people that want to keep Mixon is there weren't too many games where they actually fed him the ball, right? There weren't too many games. You could see after it gets like 12 to 15 touches, man, that Mixon's still strong in that fourth quarter, right? He's always been like that. Do we have the luxury of doing that? Do we have in this offense, do we have the luxury of saying, no, Joe Burrow, we're not going to let you throw today. We want to make sure we get to Mixon 15 touches. With Zach Taylor being a pass happy coach, is that the best way to give Mixon 1 carry and then don't see him for 2 more drives and then they give him 3 carries, right? And then 2 more drives, and then it's 5 carries. It's clearly that doesn't work the best for him, right? So does he fit this offense in the way he's being used? I agree with the people that say, hey, if he was with the 49ers, he would tear it up. If he was with the Ravens, he would tear it up. You are correct. They run a different offense than we run. He would still have more value for those teams than he does for the Bengals.
It's hard to say because, see, I think my philosophy is based off of what has actually occurred or what is currently actively happening, right? So actively, I'm going off of what I know. I don't know what he would look like in those other offenses. You're right. I do project him to be higher. I also could say I think A-Chain is going to be one of the most explosive runners in football. But you know what I couldn't predict is his injury. The same thing that I felt about Chase Brown is like, I feel like he's very explosive. Maybe he would have had more yards. Maybe that would have cut into Mixon's. What happened to him? He was injured. So all of these different things that happen have to be factored in, no matter if you don't want to look at them or not. The absolute numbers are how we view the game of football. And yes, it is on the back of a card, because at the end of the day, we're not going to be in 2050 and say, well, you know, the utilization of it is what it is. His yards are his yards. His numbers are his numbers. You could fight how he got to the numbers. You could even write articles that I've read online where they take out his best weeks to try to take away or diminish what he's accomplished. I could do that to any running back in the NFL. The truth is, Mixon only came within 100 yards of being the second leading rusher in the National Football League. Now, how he got there
to do that again next year.
He doesn't have to do that.
Plans go through and they draft a guy. Even if they only draft a guy and kept Mixon, what's his projection?
It doesn't matter to me because I have a guy that's in the place, in the building. If I operated that way, then I would never get anybody to make any of the other players around me or whatever. I wouldn't question anybody on the team or whatever. I would just go and draft brand new people, and then we would just move everybody out the way every single day. And you told me on Twitter that all you are really concerned with, I guess, is Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Although I'm a big fan of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, I feel like I'm in a Super Bowl window. So if cap space isn't an issue, cash is not an issue, I got holes all up and down the roster, why am I always gravitating, or all these people always gravitating to Mixon when you just said it yourself 15 minutes ago in here that we have other guys on the team that could take a pay cut? The same people that are talking about they need to get the cap space from Joe Mixon, you should be running to the front and saying, why is Sam Hubbard, the 66th ranked run defender in the National Football League, only had 7 tackles for a loss and only had 5 sacks? I have a list of defensive edge guys that could easily replace his $10 million. But we only pick Mixon because I don't know why it's this crazy infatuation with it. And then when I tell people about what Mixon actually accomplished, then they create this narrative that I'm some kind of homer because I'm telling you what a Bengals player has done. If somebody on our team is balling out, I'm going to let you know that that person is balling out. Currently, right now, Joe Mixon isn't the greatest running back of all time, but he is the second leading rusher in Bengals history, and he is playing really good. And you're right. If they do take away some of those carries, cool. The leadership and all these other different things do come into place. I do agree with you on the cap space of the 8.5. I understand that, but his salary is actually 5.75. If the Bengals were, if the Bengals were able to extend another year or do anything else to restructure or do something like that, I can lessen the cap hit. That's not really a
conversation, to be honest. I mean,
that's in play with the cap going up. That's 100% in play. I have a feeling that's 100% in play. But at the same token, the same people that are like desperate to get rid of Mixon or whatever, you should be looking at other different ways, like Orlando Brown's cap hit of 10. They have millions. They can go get $4 million just if they reallocate the cash from his 2024 currently coming up right now, and you could go get $4 million just off that.
Here's where we agree. If they don't do that, this franchise is fucked up still. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is free money. This is what every competing franchise we're competing against would do. And in terms of Orlando Brown, and if anyone's confused, Orlando doesn't lose a cent if that happens, if they restructure it. They give them the money up front. Here you go. Here's your money today. So like, and it creates cap space. There's no reason why it should not happen. The Bills would do it. The Chiefs would do it. The Eagles would do it. I mean, just started listing teams. The Ravens would do it, right? All these teams we're competing with, the 49ers would do it. They would all do it. But yet the Bengals would be like, we're not sure. We don't know if they're going to actually do it. And that's the fucked up part about this whole conversation. And you're going to see me get animated again when we get to the Tee Higgins situation, because I'm going to feel the exact same way about that. You could create more cap space. They're choosing not to do it. So I think for me, the difference here for you and I are you're looking at what he's done, what he's meant, his value to the franchise. I mean, there's been years where this team was terrible to watch, and Mixon was the best player on offense, right? He and Tyler Boyd were the two guys to only watching. For me, I can't help but to look at how the number one rusher in franchise history ended, how Rudy Johnson was the top 5 rusher ended. Same season, same year. All the data is conclusive. There is a wall at running back unless you're Frank Gore. Like, that's it. Like, you hit that wall and you stumble off a dark cliff and you don't know when it's going to happen. He's walking in the fog right now and the cliff is there, but you don't know where it is for Joe Mixon. But history says it's age 28 season. Now, if we come out and is that the way? Now, I was going to say, is that the way we want to see him for the last year with 120 touches and 550 yards and 4, 5, 6 touchdowns, whatever it is, while these other guys are running? If the offense is good, then I don't mind. So that's the thing I come to. Like 1,400 yards last year total, 12 touchdowns. Was the running game good?
No.
Was the offense good?
Which brings me to the more important issue to me is the use and the utilization. We talk about Mixon.
Will that change?
I don't know, but that's not a Mixon conversation. That's a Frank Pollock. That's a run game coordination.
Pollock's going to be here.
Those are all
Taylor's going to be here.
To me. Mixon, look. Mixon had the 5th most carries in the NFL. I thought you might say that, right? He's awarded that because they see him as one of the top running backs in the NFL, and the top running backs in the NFL get that many carries.
They came in with the worst depth chart at running back in the league. I mean, they had nobody. Travion Williams would not make another roster in the league.
I don't know. I think that those guys could put it, like, I feel like that's a cop-out. I feel like those guys had opportunities to go and win the coaches over and show the guys in practice. They had a chance to go show the guys in practice that they could go do that, and they never did. And Joe Mixon was available when Chase Browns of the world, when your explosive runner wasn't available, and he was there.
Mixon was the only guy left at one point. At one point, he was the only guy you give a carry to. It was Josh Jacobs had the most market share of anyone in the league. Mixon was number 2 because they could not turn to anybody else. There's value in that, but I think you're overvaluing it because there was nobody else. And we saw, you even agreed, when Chase was ready to go at the second half of the year, the running game was fine. Like that explosive mixture with Mixon's power was nice.
The difference is the part that's getting taken out of context is, and the reason why I brought up the fact that he's only getting 14 carries a game. Now, you might say, somebody listening to this right now might be like, that's high, that's low. To me, that's not anything crazy. It's just the utilization of the run that puts him in a spot where now he's regarded like, you're like, why is he getting so many carries? That's not a Joe Mixon thing. To me, if they utilize him more in the pass game, you remember you're coming off a season where Joe Mixon had more receptions than Tyler Boyd in the 2022 season with 60 receptions. In the last 3 years or whatever, he's top 4, top 5 in receptions. Any all-purpose number you could give me, whatever, he's top 5 in everything. And all of these things currently right now, he's able to do it. Now, will he do it? We don't know, but I can't project what I want someone else to do because the same depth chart that you just pointed to where Mixon was the only guy, remember, you wanted to cut him last year. Travion Williams would have been your starting running back.
Oh, I would have went and got someone. That was
you did get one. You did get somebody.
Oh,
Chase Brown.
No, I was saying get a veteran. I was saying I would Singletary. I was all for
but I'm talking. This is beyond that. Like you would have ended up with a Zeke Elliott or Leonard Fournette going up against.
If it was August, we're not going to cut him in August. We're going to cut him the first day free agency starts because that's when the bonus is.
Yeah, I feel like you set it up for the reason why Mixon should be here. You're jeopardizing $2 million hypothetically in cap space, and you're taking the risk of putting a brand new, like say I get an A-chain, and then he doesn't play the whole entire season. Now Travion Williams is my lead rusher. That's why you keep Mixon on there, because he survived the battle of attrition, and he showed you even in the last weeks leading out the season that he was fully capable of it. I would even argue in the games like the Titans game or the 49ers game where he's averaging 5 and 6 yards a carry in those games that they should have gave him the ball more. And now that we get to the end of the season, now all the context is removed. Why did we go into week 1 with a hurt Joe Burrow and then see Mixon be one of the best players on the field, get a couple of snaps? Why did we see Mixon the following week 2, with a hurt Joe Burrow, only get a couple of carries? That's the bigger issue, is the utilization. Later in the season, we figured out we can run the football more. I'm not saying we're still a pass first, team, but we can run the ball more and protect Joe Burrow at the same time, have a more efficient run game. And when you don't have an efficient run game and you don't have the scheme to support that, then the numbers that you're throwing at me, they don't work out.
Mixon's not been a very efficient runner, though, overall. I mean, even in his best years, 2018, I would say, he had a lot of long runs that year. I thought 2019 was what it was. But efficiency, I don't think works in his favor in a lot of ways. And I think you can actually increase the efficiency overall for the running game if you get a different style back in here. So I think we're going to start repeating ourselves at this point.
I feel like we are
right. To me, the upside. So if we're saying we're taking a risk by cutting him because the rest are unknown, I agree. That would be a fair definition of the situation. The upside would be if you hit on Devin Achane, if you hit on a Devin Singletary, and like that's nothing. That's a 3rd round pick and a guy making $3.25 million last year. Is your run game better? 100% better. And Achane got hurt. Well, I'm saying use all 3 guys because then Chase Brown would be your 3rd. Like that is how you instantly like, damn, we are explosive. We're dynamic. We got 3 guys we can go to. We can mix it up all game long. We can do so many more things. We're ripping off long runs, getting easy touchdowns, getting in range to score much more often. That's the upside. So is that worth it to you? To me, that's worth the risk.
And to me, it's not worth the risk for the cap savings that I get, because before we get into the draft, and I know we got to go to the next topic because I feel like we are talking a little bit in circles now, but before you get to the draft, you have to add someone. So the cap savings that people are talking about they want, you're not really getting the level of cap savings that you think you are, because you're just adding a low-level running back at $2-3 million that just eats up some of that. And the Bengals have to pay Joe Mixon $2.75 anyway. So you're back to the $5.75 that he's already about to get. It makes no sense to do
cap
that.
Space, so you'd still be $3 million savings on cap space there.
Possibly, depending on who the guy is, because you have to replace.
I'm saying spend $3 million total. I'm talking about this guy is RB 1.5 if the rookies suck. If not, then he slides to RB3.
I hear you. I could restructure Orlando Brown right now with the cap, give him a bonus, give him a signing bonus or whatever the hell right now, get $4 million in savings. I could go replace Sam Hubbard, go get $10 million. I could go do a whole bunch of different things.
And one of the things also I think
that don't involve me taking away a top 10 player on my team.
Top 10 player, but running back value comes into play. Like, let's say if you were to trade BJ Hill, I think you'd get something. If you were to trade Sam Hubbard, I think you'd get something. Even if it's a 6th or 5th round pick, you could not get anything for Joe Mixon. Because he's running back. It's not him. It's running back.
Yeah. I agree that you probably wouldn't get what you're saying, but I think a lot of teams would definitely use Joe Mixon's services.
After he got cut, he would. I'm just saying in a trade, the value isn't there because of the position, which is a big part of how I look at it.
Right. And I will say this, positional value wise, running back or whatever, I do look at it like running back, linebacker. There are different positions that I feel like are super, super interchangeable. But that's what stands out to me about Mixon is he just isn't a regular running back. Just like we're going to talk about Brock Bowers in the draft. He just isn't a regular tight end. So I do not look at
he's 6'2". He's not regular.
Right. So I don't know. So that's where I'm at. And the Bengals aren't hurting for cap space. So here we are.
Well, I think if there's one thing that you guys agreed on, obviously, it's that the room and the depth as a whole really needs some improvement. And this April, this March are all opportunities for them to fix that. Let's talk about the big story this week. An official franchise tag placed on wide receiver Tee Higgins. Is this the move? What is this signaling with the timing just ahead of the combine? Does that mean that they're open for business? How do you guys feel about the franchise tag being placed on Tee Higgins at this point? Joe, let's start with you.
So I was upset when I saw that happen. I saw people celebrating, like, yeah, T is here for 2024. We got T back. The gang's back together. And I'm like, bullshit. You think T's happy he got tagged? T is not happy he got tagged. T wants a 4 or 5 year deal so he can build a house like Joe Burrow. All right. T wants to know where he's going to be at. I want the cap hit to not be 22 million. You could put it down to 15, 14 million if you extend him. The Bengals should be extending. The part that really drives me upset. So not only is the player upset he's tagged, because every player is, there's been rarely ever a guy like, oh, I'm so happy I got tagged for 1 year here. Like, so to me, what it signals and why it upset me so much is that the Bengals, this is a sign that they once again have developed a player to be exactly who they expected him to be. He's a good player. and you're on the verge of letting him walk. And not this year, yes, because you're placing the tag on him. So maybe you get him for 5 years, but letting him walk for virtually nothing. Sans what happens in free agency down the line. We can't predict that, right? But if you get nothing for him, even if it's a compensatory third pick in 2026, which that's 2 years from now, you can basically take a round off for every year. That's how teams do it. That's like getting a 5th round pick in value. That is not worth it. Nobody here would trade Tee Higgins for a 5th round pick, right? So for me, it signals that, number one, you're on the verge of repeating past mistakes. Number two, you're still not guaranteeing money past the first year salary. And how can you compete with these teams if money is not an issue, if cash flow is not an issue anymore? Guarantee the goddamn money. You're even talking about people saying, well, you can tag him 2 years in a row. Then just guarantee both years. And he would probably sign on the dotted line. Guarantee both years for Jesse Bates, and he signs on the dotted line. And $16 million per year for Jesse Bates would be a steal right now. He was the highest paid safety in the league. We're talking about $22 million to $25 million for a Tee Higgins extension. You let Jesse Bates walk for nothing. You got nothing for him while you're in a Super Bowl window where cap space is not an issue. They've got great cap health. They got great cap space. And you're on the verge of repeating the mistake that you did with Takeo Spikes, Justin Smith, Jonathan Joseph, Kevin Zeitler, Jesse Bates, first round, second round guys that you develop, get them to where you want them to be. They're exactly what you want them to be. But now the market value isn't what you want. I don't care. Keep these guys.
You reminded me of Gene Wilder, Willy Wonka. You get nothing.
Nothing. Good day, sir.
I disagree. I disagree with damn near everything you just said. I don't even know where to begin with this. All right. So the first, huh? It was that good of a clusterfuck of I do not believe that. First, your very first point was Tee Higgins wouldn't be happy with the tag. Let me just paint a picture for everybody that's listening currently right now. Tee Higgins has made $2.5 million on average for the 4 years that he's played in the NFL. Vastly underpaid. 1,000-yard receiver, multiple 1,000-yard wide receiver, regardless, whatever number you show me where he didn't play, which will play into what I'm going to say next. But next, he's about to take a $22 million salary, which will make him top 10 highest paid wide receiver in the National Football League. They even went on record 2 weeks ago and they asked him, and when they told him, I thought it was what's the lady with NFL, whatever, when they were doing the interview and they said, hey, you know how much the tag is or something. He said, and they told him, he said, oh, that's pretty nice. He's never had a payday nearly anything close to that. $22 million is double what he's already had. Now, this is the other part. This isn't a Tee Higgins conversation for that portion of it. To me, it's the agent portion of it. You say, let's do 2 years, 46, right? 48 million. That's what
guaranteed. For guaranteed. He's probably wants 45 to 50 million guaranteed, like these other guys.
That's what we're speculating. How do we know that the agent, when I look at the list of guarantees and the most guarantees in the NFL, and I look at that list, how do I not know that? How do I know that the agent doesn't want 60 million, 65 guaranteed? We don't know that. So that's the part of the speculation part or the speculatory portion of the guarantees that nobody knows.
We can use their history, the Bengals history, though. This is negative about the Bengals. They never give a past first year guarantee. The first year salary is and the signing bonus. That's it.
Okay. So let's say it's the first year or whatever. The reason why it would be just the first year, you're giving stats currently right now on the internet on why Tee Higgins didn't play the amount of snaps that he was supposed to play and he doesn't meet the thresholds. Why would I go on the hook to give somebody 46 plus 48 million guaranteed in salary if I don't have the guarantees that this guy's going to be available? That's step number one. Step number two is, okay, cool. I'll tag him the following year. That's a leverage point, and that's just something that I have in my back pocket that I can use because in a unique scenario, the Bengals have the cap space where you normally can't do a tag and trade. I would then come back the following year and do a tag and trade. When you first came on to the internet and said the best case scenario is if Tee Higgins gets traded, I disagree. The best case scenario is Tee Higgins is on the Bengals uniform, the team that drafted him when 31 other teams did not draft him, and they took the chance and said, we're going to take this guy at the spot when they could have drafted other guys. He then played. We gave him the resources to go and be a top 10, top 15 wide receiver. Now you're telling me you want to let him walk for nothing or get not adequate level compensation?
When did I say that? What did I ever say that?
But the
I
compensation.
said let him walk for nothing pisses me off, right? Number one. And I never said take less. I never said take anything in a trade. I said the best case scenario was be if you could trade him, which means adequate compensation. Why would I assume any less than that?
Okay.
Than adequate compensation.
So if I got adequate compensation, currently right now, I'm not getting adequate compensation unless it's a first round pick. And that's what I believe. That's what I believe Mike Brown would believe. I ain't taking no second. I ain't taking no.
I can sell you on less.
I'm not taking none of that.
You ready to get sold on less? Would you rather have 2 top 100 picks? Let's say now you get Fuagawa at 18. All right. Fuaga at 18. Right tackle, Oregon State. You get a second rounder and a third rounder for Tee Higgins. Two top 100 picks. Now you're coming back and you're saying Jatavion Sanders, right? Malachi Corley, defense, Tavondre Sweat, and then a running back in the third round. So now I've added 5 guys, a wide receiver, a tight end, a running back, a defensive tackle, and a right tackle. And you use that $22 million to go and sign the best 3 tech possible that you can possibly get. Matabike, Christian Wilkins. Is your roster not better? Are you not better for the next 4 or 5 years?
That's a hypothetical in a perfect
It is,
world.
of course it is.
That's
why
not
I said
the
the
way.
best case scenario, though. All I said was the best case scenario.
That's in a perfect world. The best case scenario is I take the formula that got me to a Super Bowl.
You don't have
and
the
I
formula anymore.
And then let me say this. Let me take the same guy in Tee Higgins, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and guys like that, and then take the extra $50 million in cap space and go do everything you just said. And then go take my 18th pick and still go get my Fuaga level dude. Or I go get my Mike Unway or whatever, Unwayne who or whatever, however you pronounce his name. I go get that before I even go to the draft. The best case scenario is taking the top 10 wide receiver that I groomed and I've had in my system all this time to make sure that I have the best chance to go win a Super Bowl with the known. Every single thing that we've said from the beginning that we started this pod to now, you operate in a lot of ifs. I don't. I operate in absolutes. I absolutely know that if Tee Higgins is available and healthy, I have a really good chance. The only thing that people are scared of when they play the Bengals, if you're an outside person listening right now, is the 2 horses on the outside. I am not about to compromise or take that away unless you give me a top 17 pick, top 15, somewhere around top 7. Jags, give me your top number 17 pick. Anything less than that, we about to run it back, go straight to the bowl, and I got $50 million in cap space, and I'm going to go fill in the rest of my roster. Nobody's scared of that scenario you just said.
That's also best case scenario. Someone gives you 17. So you can't knock mine and say that's best case scenario. You're looking for the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow with that.
Don't give me 17. I'm going to run with Tee Higgins, the known entity, and I'm going to go right to the bowl. If Joe Burrow plays and Tee Higgins plays, I'm going to the AFC Championship at a minimum.
See, I think some people got confused reading some of those comments when I did say that. And from you right now, that I don't want T. Like, that's never been a thing. I'm upset they don't have a long-term deal with T. That's no best case scenario. You have Tee Higgins for the next 4 years. Come cover us. I'm going to fill in the weapons around them. I'll fill in the offensive line. We'll draft. We'll figure it out. Come cover our 2 studs. They didn't make that happen. The Bengals didn't make that happen. And it looks like with the tag going right away, bang, right on them. Yeah. Doesn't look like it's going to happen again. I know people are holding out hope, but man, I'm not holding out hope now. I'm like, this sucks. It sucks that they can't come to a long-term deal. And again, it's got to be guaranteed money. David Muggaletta, we've got to make that assumption. I don't think we're going crazy by assuming that. It's got to be the guaranteed money. And that's been the thorn in the Bengals side for as long as free agency has been around, and for why they have never been able to really get an elite player in free agency. And so we're sitting here and I'm like, damn, we're doing the same thing again. So best case scenario was
not the same.
Extending Tee Higgins. Would the best case scenario be extending him?
Sure.
Right. I believe that's probably off the table.
Just so people know, Ryan was at work and he had to go. So don't think that Ryan just like left us hanging. He had to go.
Like,
so that's what Ryan was like. I'm out of peace.
So best case scenario would be extending T. To me, after
we
that,
both agree.
Right. That's number one. Worst case scenario is letting him walk right now. Right. Like not tagging him, not extending him, letting him walk in free agency. Fuck that. I don't want that. That's number 4. The in between is tag him or tag him and trade him. To me, tag him and trade him is better than just tagging him and letting him walk for nothing. Because if I can get a premium pick And we're not even disagreeing there. You just said if I can get 17, you're doing it. If you can get 15, you're doing it. And like, so to me, that's best case scenario than to let him play for 1 year and let him walk. Which one's better for you? Pick 15 this year or let him play for 1 year and walk.
If I let him play this year, I'm now have let me add the context that is conveniently getting thrown out. If I let him play this year, this is what you're getting. You're not walking away with nothing. You're getting the opportunity to give Joe Burrow the best resources that money could buy. That having Jamar Chase on the outside, Tee Higgins on the other side, perhaps maybe a Brock Bowers level talent or Fuaga level talent up front. Mm-hmm. All things. I can even go Javon Baker second round. I could go Malachi Corley or whatever.
I should have said Javon Baker in that scenario. Damn.
But check this out. What the key to what I'm doing is I'm not panicking currently right now when the entity that I have is at its lowest stock. Currently right now, Tee Higgins is coming off his worst season, right? So currently right now, no one's trying to give me adequate compensation. So in the time being, I have a problem. Wide receiver 3 is now gone. So now in the time being, I can't just say, let me get rid of wide receiver 2 and then create more variance or whatever inside of that. I need to make sure that Javon Baker and I need to make sure X guy, where the tight end dude, whoever, are now a part of my system. And I had a year to breathe with that. If I come out of that and those dudes elevate and they're a lot better, then the following year, it's very unique that are people that are listening to this. You couldn't have did this with Jesse Bates. But the Bengals have cap space to be able to tag and trade. And unlike this year, the Bengals would currently right now, they tag so fast because now get the agent out my face. If you want to talk to the Bengals, you're talking directly to me, Mike Brown. Next year, I'm in a better space because I have wide receiver, boom, boom, boom. I got all of this stuff going. So now the agent, I say, yeah, go find me somebody that's going to give me a second, third, whatever. I don't care. I'll take that because now I'm in a better spot than what I am currently right now. You're in a crazy spot where you don't even have a wide receiver 3. And then you're like, yeah, let me take off the top 5 player on my whole entire roster and create all this variance. And that's the problem that I don't like. Unless somebody gives me pick number 17, because then I would say, okay, give me 17. I'm going to trade up with my 4th round pick. I'm going to go get Brock Bowers at pick 12, 14, whatever. I'm going to then take the other 1st round pick. I'm going to trade out of that, and I'm going to go add all the players. I could do so much with pick number 17. But
well, that's what I'm saying. To me, that's why I rank that as being the best case available that's left to me.
Right.
Because what you're right, though, about the tagging 2 years in a row. It's a unique situation. You are correct. They actually can do this. And I would not have suggested it with Bates because $16 million on the tag was already the highest level.
Nobody would give you what they would give you.
Well, not even that. I mean, for to eat it as a cap situation for the team, the second year you tag a guy, it's 120% of what the tag was the first time. So it would be $26.2 million for T. Like that's by the time we get there and Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and Jamar Chase get their deals, that ain't gonna be nothing. And that number doesn't change. Like T's tag was locked in before the cap went up another $13 million, his tag number, because it's the top 5 positions at that, what they're paid at receiver. So it's like, all right, 21.8, that's nothing. We'll do it. The tag is easy this year. And then now next year it works because it's 120% of this year's tag. So like you actually could do it. You're not wrong.
It's 26. Let me tell you a cheat code too. They have a portion in Joe Burrow's deal. Like now check this out, everybody that's listening right now. Currently, as it stands with no added people, the Bengals have $112 million in cap space the upcoming 2025 season. So that's step 1. So it's a very unique way. People say that's kind of risky. You would just tag Tee Higgins, and what if nobody gives you the offer? It's not risky because they have the fuel and they have all these different things around them to be able to execute what I'm talking about. And even next year, Tee Higgins would be able to pick whatever. But they have a cheat code in Burrow's contract where they could restructure the following year and go get $19 million in cap space just off that alone. And they're not worried about They're not worried about the cap space next year. They could go next year, hypothetically. Let's say this worst case scenario for Tee Higgins this upcoming season, he bombs out and has 600 yards or something like that. Yeah, nobody's getting tagged, whatever. you're like, whoo, on the bank. Like this is the thing about control for me with the tag. So you said people were celebrating. I wasn't celebrating, but I got control. I don't want these ops and all these people that are listening right now sitting there saying, I told you ain't get Tee Higgins. No, I have full control over Tee Higgins.
I don't see this. I don't see him.
there. I read a little bit of it. It's kind of funny. It gets me riled up. So look, check this out. So now I have full control over what I'm going to do currently right now. And if you got a really good offer, I'll do it. If you don't have a really good offer, I'm just going to go with Tee Higgins and go and play. If he has a bad year, the reason, and this is the main point about why don't you just go pay him the guarantee? Somebody said, why don't you just go pay him the 40-something? If it is 40-something, yes, correct. I'm with you. The Bengals should pay him 40-something million guaranteed. But say that it's not. Say it's more. I'm the Bengals. I'm saying, whoo, if he only say he only has 500, 400 yards or something because he's hurt most of the season next year. They're like, whoo, I'm glad I didn't pay him 40-something, $50 million guaranteed. I think everybody's looking at only the good side of what's currently going on and saying, well, if Tee Higgins goes and gets 1,200 yards. Yeah, if Tee Higgins gets 1,200 yards, I'm tagging him again. And then this time, I now have Javon Baker. I now have Brock Bauer. I now have all these guys that are in my system. I'm a really good team. I just made a Super Bowl run. Maybe I won a Super Bowl. I had 1,200 yards with Tee Higgins. Who gives a shit? I'm just going to tag him again. Now tell your agent, go give me a 3rd round, 2nd round pick, and peace out. We'll see you later at that point, and I'll go get my money back that way. I still had control. Yeah. And you know what one of my favorite sayings in life is? Control what you can control. Now, people don't mean that in the literal sense, but in this instance right now, I am controlling the guy that I took a chance on, and I took him, and 31 other teams passed up on him, and Duke Tobin told him, go get your own. Joe Burrow told you, you better keep him, and I expect him to be out there. Well, God damn it, he's out there, and he's going to play, and he's in a Bengal uniform, and if you don't like it, give me the number 17 pick or cry about it.
They'll be crying about it then, because I don't think you're getting that. But, no, I'm with you. Right. He's a Bengal. And that's how the Bengals will operate too, I think. So I don't think you're off. I think they'll say, give us 1st round pick or don't answer. Don't even call us. They'll have an answering machine. The voice will just say, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. Or if you're calling about Tee Higgins, you better be offering her the 1st pick. If not, just hangs up right then and there. But what I was going to say is the negative, though, for tagging, though, same agent as Bates. Are we not going to see T until the final week of preseason, right? The final week right before regular season starts. And then, so that really puts a need to draft a receiver. So now we're elevating. We've already said a few times throughout the show that there's a lot of needs on this team. Actually, there's a reason they got so much cap space. They need to fill some holes on this roster right now. And we've already said, like, we want to draft a right tackle. We want to draft a pass rusher at 3 tech. They need a nose tackle. They need a 4th corner. They need a tight end. They need a running back. Yeah. They need a wide receiver. I mean, you can't expect to hit on all those in the draft. And now it's elevating what you need. I need to draft a receiver in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round if we expect him to come and be a top 3 receiver on this team in another year.
I mean, I lost Tyler Boyd. I was going to have to get a wide receiver anyway.
Probably, but he is the slot guy. And we could go more 2 tight ends if things did go that direction. If Bowers was there, Bowers could be the slot guy and the tight end, to be honest with you.
I would love that. I would trade up.
I would too.
I would trade up from 18. What did Steelers trade up? 18 to 14. They gave up like a 4th.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me up to 12. I think the Saints, nobody's talking about them. I think the Saints, the Broncos, and
Colts,
those
right there. Yeah.
That's kind of rich, man. Have you read the different articles? I think it was like Daniel Jeremiah and a lot of different people have been talking about why would you draft a tight end? So there's somebody listening right now that's saying
the cost.
Well, Brock Bowers, he's going top 10. The argument against it, and it's a really good argument, but it's an organizational argument. It isn't a fan argument, is why would I pay a guy coming into the league top tier tight end money in the top 1/3 of the position group, and I can get more value from a different position like wide receiver, cornerback? It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, tackle. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense. I'm gonna pay this guy, I don't know, like $6-7 million or whatever off the break.
That's really an expansion of drafting premium positions as high as possible, because the premium positions we know get paid the most. So you try to draft those guys because it also creates a value on your cap. We want as many value guys as possible. But to us, I think Brock would be not only just the tight end, but the slot receiver, which means his value, even if he was making $6 million in that final year of that, or the 3rd year of his contract, would be a value to the Bengals because they would feed him 120 targets from that spot the way they have. Boyd
They
and
would
a
cook.
tight end. Yeah, they would. So
I think
I'm
it'd
with
be a
it.
natural transition. It would be a natural transition. That's the dream to me. But and I know we gotta end this thing soon, and I gotta run a commercial too. The one thing that I'm thinking though, going into the draft, this is just how I'm thinking. What keeping somebody says, well, why would you pay Tee Higgins the $21 million? There aren't many players on this team that are getting paid, and I constantly told I'm in a Super Bowl window. I'm not about to get rid of guys and then I'm stuck with just Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. The way I look at the roster, yes, there are holes, but if they just went with these three positions before the draft, I think it would be fine. That's D tackle, whether that's Sheldon Rankins level guy or you go get a nose and a Grover, Grover Stewart type guy, whatever, Leonard Williams, whatever, get a little bit of both. Maybe you do that. One D tackle, one tight end. I don't think it'll be Noah Fant money type guy. Maybe it's Hunter Henry type guy. I think it's like mid-level guy. I would love Hunter Henry. Maybe it's Cody Parkinson. I don't know. But mid-level tight end money, whatever. You do that. You then come back with the tackle. I like Trent Brown. A lot of people here do not like Trent Brown, and I can't figure it out. But, say it's Eleanor as the third guy, whatever. Those three pieces right there with the $50 million, I can even show you a contract for Mike Onway or whatever that only takes away Unway. I can't never say his name. Unwinu. I can never say his name. Unwinu. I can show you a contract proposal right now that would have him taking up a $10 million cap hit, and that's the highest level tackle on the market. And then you still would have $40 million in cap space. You can still go cook. So my thing is attack those three position groups, and then afterwards we fill in the roster after we come out of the draft and see what we get. I do need to read a couple of these super chats. Thank you, Rafa King of Clay. He says the Bengals won't get anything higher than a third-round pick for T unless he agrees sign and trade. Media has been delinquent in mentioning this. There was another.
He would sign anyways. You wouldn't trade him unless he signed. There would be a negotiation. You would allow that to happen.
That's a fact. There was another one I saw too.
Yeah, it was Jay Neff, I think. He said the Bengals need to grow up and start paying.
It's time for Bengals to grow up. Please pay our players. Okay. Okay.
It might have been right after I rambled off the first and second round guys they've lost after the first contracts.
I need to give a thanks so we can pay some bills too. I need to shout out to Midwest Best Barbecue. Check us out right now.
Wings and them CTVs. Midwest Best is the place to be for queuing wings. Midwest Best is the place to be for queuing wings. It's the AC to the Zim, M into the B's. Uno wings, Jeep on wings, and them CTVs. Midwest Best is the place to be for queuing wings. Midwest Best is the place to be for queuing wings. Say what up to Jordan Battle. We be going to battle. Intercepting balls like CTB did on Seattle. Putting 6 up on AZ. Juice gang amazing. Make sure you come get these wings. The Zimby stay blazing. And T game be smooth as ice. Jamal making DBs fold. TB got big levels. And now you already know. Hits so pretty for Uno wings. Cam got the new wings. We call them CTBs. Only at MBs. Nation to the Zim. M into the B's.
Okay, that was Midwest Best Barbecue. Make sure look, if you're in the Cincy region, I know you're going to go to a couple games, Joe. I promise you, best wings. I know you're a big fan of wings and pizza and different things like that. 669 Justice Court, Loveland, Ohio, probably about 20 minutes from the stadium. I promise you, top 3 wings in the city. The ribs and everything like that are amazing too. But I promise you, the brisket, they got the CTB wings going crazy. They got the Uno wings with a little Cajun rub. I love them. Best half and half lemonade iced tea mix too. Those are the best people on earth, and I love them so much. And they have the best wings. Aside from that, Joe,
can I make one more point before we move on?
I was gonna say, do you think that we made some ground tonight?
I think we did for sure, 100%. I hope people see, the passion, the pulse, and the and the inflection in your voice. If you said when we started this, when it, how we feel about it, while we may differ, obviously we have passion and have good points to bring up. To me, though, there is a lot of my own anger towards the franchise. And that's some of that I think people take that as, oh, he doesn't like the player, or is he even a Bengals fan? Listen, if the Bengals this year in free agency, so step one, I want them to modernize. I want them to do a few things that we know that they're serious. Now they're serious, but I want to know like you're doing what these other teams are doing. And that restructure for Orlando Brown should definitely happen. It's free money. Should happen for every franchise in the league. I want to see them guarantee into the second year of anyone's contract that they sign, whether that's a free agent, whether that's Tee Higgins, who it may be. It shows progress that they're building towards it. I thought what they did with Orlando Brown was progress. We need to see that next step in the next one. And then for me, finally, is I want to lower the cap hits this year as much as possible. When they sign Alex Kappa and the Jags sign, the dude from Washington, I can't remember the guard's name. You remember that he was the top guard that year, and it's killing me now. But the top guard, the same year the Alex Kappa signed, Alex Kappa had a higher cap hit than him. Brandon Scherf.
Yeah.
Brandon Scherf. So the Jags side, perfect. Yes, he gets way more money than Alex Kappa, but his cap hit was lower than Alex Kappa's. I'm tired of it. Pack the cap, pack the box, pack the roster. Let's go win a goddamn ring and stop fucking around and saving cap money for future years. We don't need it. Get it now.
Right. And I want to make this clear too to everyone. I hear this so much every time that me and you talk, is that you're so non-pro player, which I disagree. Like, I feel like you are for players, you are for like whatever at different points. You have a different viewpoint or a different vantage point. Me, I have personal relationships with some of the players, whatever, but I do not let that cloud like how I view whatever. I think like right now, one of the plans that I have this all season is to go get a veteran safety in there because I don't believe in Dax Hill as the guy at safety. And say I'm wrong.
I love Dax Hill, and I think you're right. I think I will.
You see what I'm saying?
Well. Plus, there's so many veteran safeties out there that look good that they're not going to get paid. They didn't get paid last year, other than Bates either. Like
exactly,
Chloe Gilman or Geno Stone for $5-6 million. What
give me a Darnell Savage for 3-4.
Fine,
I don't care.
Fine.
You see what I'm saying? But I get this stigma attached to me that I'm so pro player. Like there are players that I don't like as much, and I think the difference is you're probably a little bit more vocal, whereas a guy like Trey Hill, who I think shouldn't even be on the Bengals roster,
I'm with it.
I just don't even have tweets for him. So like like those are the things.
Fire when it happened. I say that all the time. So like people think it's Mixon or it's Higgins or he's turning on these guys because they're costing too much or their deals up. Man, they drafted Jackson Carman. I said, shit, they got to draft another lineman in the third round because that ain't never gonna work.
Right. It's a lot of that around the board, and I am
pro player though. I don't want to get that confused. I've been a union rep, so like to me, I'm all about guys getting their money, getting their deals, getting what they're paid, the market value, get all the money you can from these guys, from these owners, and from these teams.
Unless you're Joe Mixon.
Well, I mean, I still want to build a championship team the best way I think. So it's the two sides of me that fight sometimes in my head.
I think that, you hit on this is my biggest takeaway. Check this out. This is one of my biggest takeaways. You kind of came full circle. I think your philosophy on the running back itself, I think that you put so much aggression towards your plan that in my mind, this is just my opinion, I think you lose sight of the actual player itself sometimes. And I think that your frustration with the front office on like the cap space and all the other stuff like that, I feel like a lot of your frustration to me should be moved back to coaching a little bit in terms of the scheme, the utilization of the play calls themselves, because I think a lot of these numbers and a lot of the different things that don't work for Mixon or don't work for Tee Higgins or don't work for whatever player is a product of the play calling utilization. And check this out. A lot of the Ravens running backs, they are hurt because they're a run heavy team. Their quarterback had games that I watched their fans go crazy and be like, oh my God, he's so crazy. He dropped back 20 times. I think what I learned in the 2023 season with Joe Burrow being hurt is that you cannot drop back 30 times plus and do it through the regular season. Maybe in the playoffs, you can go crazy and go win games. When Stroud was 10-10 with Lamar Jackson, that was a time for them to drop back 30 times and let Stroud go and cook. He failed to do so. And the playoffs is different for me. Just like they held back Josh Allen from all those power rushes and all the RPO stuff where he actually has run options in there that are until they save that to the playoffs. And to me, during the regular season, I learned that, we're looking at quarterbacks that hurt, I saw that a lot of those Ravens running backs go down too, and I thought that they had a lot of runs and a lot of wear and tear that are put on them. Now nobody even really cares about Gus Edwards, including them. But the thing
Dobbins,
that
again,
in Dobbins, like I think his career might be over. I don't know, but all I'm saying is that the quarterback play itself and the utilization and being able to call, bro, it don't even gotta be 50-50. It don't even really gotta be 60-40. It could be.
It's just gotta complement it better.
Yeah, it's just it's when they call it, it's how they call it, and it's the scheme. And I'm tired of watching short yardage situations, having guys run free. I'm tired of watching weak side runs get blown the hell up. I'm tired of watching all of these free rushers in the scheme itself. And I feel like more of what you're kind of directing towards Mixon, it really is a product of the scheme and the actual play calls. Even if you don't think that Mixon is the greatest running back of all time, I just feel like a lot of that
it's probably fair, but you can't really those guys aren't going anywhere this year. I mean, the scheme and the coaches, that's who we got. They already decided that's who we got. So like the only thing from now we can do is players. We can only talk about the players. I mean, if we would have had this conversation right after January, I said Frank Powell's got to go. They got to figure something out with the run scheme. It ain't good enough. It's not good enough. It's not dynamic enough. They don't block it well enough. They're doing too much, and no one's an expert in any of the concepts. So that leads to them not being able to consistently run it. They don't consistently call runs enough, so then they don't execute it at a high enough level. And everyone says like, oh, like Orlando Brown's PFF grade goes down as soon as he signs here. Yeah, look at the run grade. I mean, the whole run blocking as a whole takes a hit, and that's such a big part of PFF's grading. No wonder you can see it. Like that's all it is.
Look how many times that he's in pass pro versus. I looked at Trent Brown, who's in a run, in a run heavy scheme or whatever. He's got over 200 something more snaps in the run game than he does in the pass game. So think about how much error you're inviting when you're scoring or you're grading someone. For me personally, I don't take the PFF grades. Like I like they're cool, but I like to look at the film and match it up with the actual data that I'm getting from it. How many pressures did you allow? What's the rate that is happening at? How often was it? All these different things like that. So the grades I don't care about. Give me the data. And I'm looking at so many more pass pro snaps. Even Jonah,
they're like, so no play action,
no
RPO, no quick. Like they're at 48%. It's like you can't do that 50% of the time. You want everyone's like, I want the Dolphins, I want the 49ers offense like halfway through the year. I went and looked. I'm like, they're true pass setting like 30% of the time. They're not even close.
Exactly. Some of them wide receivers that we talked about are screen merchants too. Like but we'll get into that in another show. But what I was gonna say, a lot of that stuff, though, and even I'm guilty of this too. I'm not a big fan of Jonah Williams, but if he were in a different scheme, he wouldn't be forced to be put into harm's way as far as the error itself in that many pass dropbacks. And the way that I thought that Lamar stayed healthy, Pat Mahomes is a mutant, so he doesn't count. Right. And the way that Josh Allen stayed healthy is that they limited the amount of times that they put them in harm's way. And I think that that's a bigger part of the equation, especially starting off this season. You talk about 2 tight end sets. You talk about, like how they're running the football or when they're running it. They need to start off the season and say, look, even if we aren't going to win this game, we're not dropping back 50 times in week 1. Joe Burrow coming fresh off of wrist surgery. We got to run the football. And if it doesn't work or whatever, like initially or whatever, we got to figure it out. It's a lot sooner because we have to get throughout the regular season. Once we get in the playoffs, I'm guns up blazing. And that doesn't mean that I'm a run happy. Yeah, I'm not a run happy guy. I'm being very smart.
You're not wrong. That is I agree completely. They need to be more balanced. They need to absorb some more of the Jake Browning offense into the Joe Burrow offense, right? And be more balanced and be more run heavy. And I'm not saying that you go over the scales on the 50-50 mark. I'm with you. But that's also why I end up full circle of, well, I better make sure I'm more dynamic and have more options at running back. You like last year's running back depth chart. There's a reason why they didn't stick to the run sometimes when you're pounding your head for 2.5 yards per carry, nothing's there and no one's breaking tackles, no one's doing anything. It's like, yeah, we can't keep running it if it's 2nd and 8. Like you can't run it again. I understand it. So I'm with you. I want to be able to run it more, which is why I want to spend, even if it's more money there, but on 3 different guys. I wouldn't be against that either. So it's not completely about the cap space. It's about trying to be different, more dynamic, and get guys that I could rotate freely because I'm not worried about one guy making $8.75 million. The next guy is under $1 million. And it's like, I kind of got to give the guy with $8.7 million all the carries.
Right. I hear you. So, I mean, yeah, that's fair. Jawan Sylvan says, hopefully the Blackburns watched this and took notes because sometimes I feel like they're stuck in their old ways at times. I've been told before from people in the front office that they have seen some of my stuff. I'm pretty sure they watched Joe's stuff. So, I've actually had a chance to meet Elizabeth, and she told me that she liked some of the stuff that I said. So you never know. She might be checking it out. I'm one of the crazy people that went to the stadium, and I told her straight up before we got Jamar Chase that you guys should watch LSU and you should draft Jamar Chase. And I was in a room with John Sheeran and all these guys, and I was there at the stadium, and I told them that straight up, y'all need to draft Jamar Chase. And everybody looked at me like, why is this crazy guy talking? But that's just how I am.
2021, we were walking to that meetup we had right before the Jags game where we all sat together and had a good time. And people don't know that Zim and I have hung out. We've had a great time together. So like people see us fighting and then we're DMing like, yo, this is going to be a great show. right. People don't realize like this is, I feel nothing ill will towards you. I want you to know that face to face. Like, I love all your passion, all your stuff. Keep doing your thing. But we're walking to that meetup. I was walking with Elizabeth there from the Holy Grail all the way to the to the Blind Pig.
Piggly Wiggly.
That's what I almost said. Do you guys have Piggly Wiggly? We got those. But
no, I went to school down south, so I know what that pig ears, bloody pig smelling place is. Oh my god!
But I couldn't think of anything good to say at the time. Like draft this guy, do this. And I was like, you know what? White helmets. We got to get the white helmets going soon. And it's not. I mean, they already had it going. She goes.
Yeah. That was a dope time. But yeah, I mean, we, Joe, I definitely, I don't agree with everything, and we don't have to agree with everything.
I wouldn't expect you to. I don't think anybody should. I don't agree with anyone on everything. Nobody. My best friend, my wife, my kids, none of them.
My wife definitely don't agree with me. But I just want people to understand, like, I feel like we're moving it forward. That when I'm old, I won't be on here and I won't be fighting and cooking people on Twitter. I won't have time to do that. My son's getting older, all these different things going around me or whatever. I think it's really important to understand that we're doing this because we care. We have families that do count on us to give them stuff, to give them different things, to provide and help them out. And at the same time, we got a love for this team. And I think people got to understand I'm now at the point where I am too old to be fighting and having ill will towards people, especially Joe Goodberries of the world or whatever. Like, if we don't agree, we don't agree. But at no point, and I'm going to call somebody out. Like, I want everybody to be listening to this right now. You don't have to call somebody out their name. You don't have to talk trash to somebody about something that has nothing to do about sports in a sports forum. You could talk football like me and Joe just did for an hour and 20 minutes without doing any of that and landing your points. And a lot of people aren't man or woman enough to say that. Yeah. And that's part of talking that's talking ball. When people say talking ball, that's talking ball.
Because you probably get it too. Like when we start disagreeing on Twitter, next thing you know, I see people saying things. And I'm like, you don't gotta defend me. You don't gotta say nothing bad about him. It's not like that. We're just talking football. It's cool. It's relaxed. We're all right.
Right. And so that's it. I think that's a great point. I think, do you have anything that you want to close out?
That's how I wanted to close it.
First Star Logistics, where can they find your material, Joe? Where can they check you out on YouTube, Twitter? If they've been on the rock, where can they see any of your stuff?
There are some Bengals fans that don't follow me. Sometimes I click their profile and I go, what's happening here? But yeah.
There's a lot of them that don't follow me.
It's been 15 years on that Bird app. I've been talking Bengals Twitter, Bengals football for a long time now. I pulled up a tweet today with Travell Wharton in 2012, getting hurt and Clint Bowling starting that was his run starting at that point at left guard. But on there a long time at Joe Goodberry if you don't follow me. And on Tuesdays and Fridays, I do a show on YouTube, Bengals on the Brain, where I usually focus on film, data, draft prospects, free agency, what I would do, what I think they're not doing, what's dumb, what's smart, yada, yada. And that's on the First Star Media channel.
Appreciate you, man. I don't have anything else to say. I think I laid out every single thing that I could possibly think out, or is I guess on those two subjects. We got to do something later on. Maybe you can get me on there if you got some time or something. Maybe you could come back with aces on here. We'll figure out something, but we got to continue
the draft so we can talk players. We didn't get that much time to do that.
Hell no, yeah. We'll get into that though. But I think we're a lot on the same page. I just look at this Bengals team and feel like I'm in a Super Bowl window, and God damn it, I need to go get it. Like, I need to go get it. And that's where I'm at, man. Anything other than that, I don't got any time for it. I just want to win one. Peace out. I love y'all. Make sure y'all check out all of our stuff. Follow me if you get some time. Peace.
It's an exciting time to be a Bengals fan.
I'm AC Zim.
We got a special show as always.
The voice of the Bengals.
Hello,
Dan
world.
Ford, Willie Anderson, Corey Dillon.
The name of this thing is called Wincinnati, and I'm not going to stop.
Talk to us about that roller coaster season.
I'm still gonna give you the same AJ.
I'm gonna work as hard as I can to be the best.
Always working ever since I met y'all, boy.
I gotta get your top 5 receivers.
Gutter, man.
It was good. Watch out for us.
All right, Zim.